Table. This is a brand new YouTube channel that's all about tabletop and fantasy. I am Christian Hoffer, and today I am joined by a very special guest. I am joined by the one, the only James Introcaso of MCDM. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm so good. It's really great to be here, Christian, and I am excited to be chatting with you again. One of the greatest one of the greatest journalists in this place. You are also a journalism. You
Yeah.
are a discipline unto yourself. So yeah, I'm really really pumped to be here talking with you about Draw Steel, the RPG that we are currently working on, possibly everybody knock on wood getting close to finishing the text for. We shall see.
Ooh,
We shall see.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's if you have followed me and my work, you probably know about Draw Steel as I have written about it and talked about it before on various other places. But since this is a brand new YouTube channel, why don't we start with the very easy opening question? What exactly is Draw Steel?
Excellent. So Draw Steel is a heroic, tactical, cinematic fantasy RPG, and that's a lot of words. That means we want you to play giant heroes in a medieval fantasy land setting, and our combat takes place on a grid with miniatures because positioning matters, right? And so this isn't a game where you're like grubbing for gold coins going into dungeons, which are very fun games to play, by the way. That's just not the focus of this game. The focus of this game is, saving the village, saving the people, saving the world, saving the timescape, which is our version of the many-worlded, multiverse, if you will. So that's the idea, right? Is this is a game that really focuses on that heroic aspect and that tactical aspect. So if that's what you're into, Draw Steel is the game for you.
And so Draw Steel, you guys have been working on this for a few years now. It officially got announced in early 2023. A crowdfunding campaign was run earlier this year. And so now, how close to completion do you think Draw Steel is right now in terms of playtesting and revisions and things like that?
That's a really good question. So, right now, where we are, right, and I'm feeling the pressure of it all because it's never just simple. There's always things to do, but we're feeling pretty good about by the beginning of next year. We would like to have all of the writing wrapped up by like January, right? And then we would like to go into editing and layout, which is a months and months long process, where we continue to look out things and think about how we could make the game smoother and better in terms of the language, in terms of the visualization of it. Now that we have all the rules settled, so that's the plan right now. Now the question, of course, becomes like, the future's always in motion. We could find out things in our last rounds of playtest that make us go, oh, we need to keep playtesting, right? But that is the schedule that we're currently on, and we're optimistic about it. Right now, we play the game all the time internally at MCDM. Our patrons are playing it all the time. Our testing team is playing it all the time, and right now, like, it works, right? And that's really the best thing. There's certainly a lot to go through. There's a lot to fix in these last couple of weeks. A lot of bugs to squash. A lot of things to change. But the core of the game is feeling really, really solid, and we're having a lot of fun now with playing in the details, right? With things and character options and stuff like that. So it feels great to be at that stage right now.
And so the latest playtest packet that came out a little while ago, had some new ancestries. It had some new things like titles, some changes to leveling up. So let's run through some of the things that were in that most recent playtest. For those people who may be following this game's development, but aren't really diving deep into the weeds, so to speak, and getting their hands muddy in playtesting. I'm feeling like I'm mixing the metaphors there a little bit, but
I love it. I love it.
so let's talk about downtime. How has Draw Steel given players some meaningful stuff to do during their downtime, in between the heroic actions and things like that? What do you have in store for their downtime?
So a big part of downtime for us, like we picture, okay, hey, I'm taking a respite, right? And a respite is a period of 24 hours where you don't do anything. You're just concentrating on getting your stamina back, right? So that you don't die in your recoveries and things like that. During that time, you can engage in downtime. So you could take multiple respites in a row, right? You could have multiple, hey, we're taking a break for a week. That's 7 respites, right?
Mhm.
Or you could just say, hey, we're stopping for a day because we need to get our stuff back. Either of those allow you to work on downtime projects, right? And a downtime project is essentially they are, many of them are crafting or research related, right? So research being like, hey, you know what would be great if we can find out what is occurring with XYZ villain, or hey, you know what would be really awesome? It would be if we had the blade of quintessence as we go up against these this evil vampire. Can someone research where we could find the blade of quintessence, right? And so we have all of that kind of different stuff that we will give to people information on how to do that. And the idea is that every time you take downtime, you sit down, you make a roll, and that gives you progress towards completing that goal. You track all this stuff on your character sheet, right? So it's like, okay, I want to find the blade of quintessence. I have this map. I need to study this map, and I need to study these books. Let me make a roll. Maybe your director can say like, well, that's actually going to be pretty easy with the materials you have. So it might only require like 1 day of downtime to find that. Or it might be like, this isn't a language you don't understand. And the book is written cryptically and it's hard to figure out. Like this could be several days worth of rolls to find that. Now, the other option you have, of course, is like, well, wait, maybe I could make a blade of quintessence, right? And that's where the crafting component comes in. And crafting works the same way. You just need to have the materials to craft it, right? So every magic item in the book has a like special ingredient with it and a language that it's like schema, it's crafting schematic, right, is
Mhm.
associated with. And so you have to find the crafting schematic, you have to find the special ingredient, and when you do, you can engage in beginning to craft that item, right? And so that gives directors kind of a way to say like, okay, you can't just be crafting magic items all the time, but if we want you to be able to craft some items, hey, here you go, like you found this dragon scale, now you can make this cool thing, right? And that works the same way, making a roll and you're making incremental progress. Now we provide for every single treasure that you can find in the book, right? Like here's the item you need, here's the language you need, here's how many project points it will take, which is
Okay.
every time you roll, you're adding up project points, you're tracking it on the sheet. And during downtime, then there are also these events that can happen, right? So the director can roll and say, like, aha, thieves show up, they want the item that you have, the thing that you're trying to craft, or hey, the information that you want. In doing research, you actually learned that like there's somebody who knows the answer nearby. And so you could finish out this research project, but that might take a while, or you could go try to visit, the old woman who lives atop the mountain if you are brave enough to scale the peaks, right? And so there was that. But then we opened this wide when we put our designer Willie Abeel on it. Willie looked at downtime and said, "There's a potential to use this system for things like reconnecting with family, building roads to help your community, right? Fishing, right? There's a fishing mini game now that uses some of these mechanics that is related to downtime. Fishing might be the most popular thing in the game right now, based on all the survey feedback, right? Like it's one of the highest rated things that people love. So we have cracked open now other things that you could do with downtime, like actual not crafting, not research, but like what would your character want to do? Maybe they don't want to research anything. Maybe they don't want to craft anything. Maybe they just want to go back home and reconnect with loved ones. Maybe they want to visit a mentor and learn a new skill, right? And so all of that is also available in terms of the downtime system.
Okay. I could dig more into that, but we got a few other things that we need to get through. There's some new ancestries that were also in the latest playtest packet. So, can
Mhm.
you run down on those? Tell us a little bit about that because that's one of the things with these new fantasy games that have been coming out. There's always the standards: the human, the elf, the dwarf, things like that. Um, but every game has some like unique ancestries and races and similar things to that. So what are some of the new ones that have popped up in your latest playtest?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite moments, right, in opening a player guide to a new RPG or in the player section is like seeing artwork and being like, "Whoa, I can be that." Right?
Mhm.
That is so cool. And so we definitely wanted those moments in our book. So there's a few things in here. The first is the Time Raiders. So people may remember the Time Raiders from Flea Mortals if they're familiar with it at all. Well, now they are a playable ancestry in our game, and they are four-armed individuals who have these like mono sensor eyes, right? Like they have like one big kind of visor cyclopsy, right? Like Cyclops from the X-Men eye. And they are psionic, and they have a very their culture gives them sort of a like 80s punk rock mohawk kind of look, right? They almost look like the gang that is in the Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
Uh,
mutants.
yeah, the mutants, exactly. So they have this look about them, and they have these psionic abilities. And the reason they have that is because they were, once captured by the voiceless talkers, who are a squid-faced psionic thing, totally original that we created. And so they have these psionic powers that they have developed from being like people who were captured by these folks, forced to work for them, and then eventually broke free, right?
Mhm.
And they so they're really fun, and it's fun. Like they have abilities that relate to their forearms, that relate to their eye visor, being able to see through stuff, that relate to their innate psionic abilities, right? Being able to move stuff telekinetically and speak to each other telepathically. Um, and then we also have the Memnec. The Memnec come from Axiom, which is the plane of uttermost law, and they are people, right? Like they're people. They think, they feel, they're sapient, but they have bodies that are made of metal or porcelain or glass, right? And they have these beautiful designs, and they are like machine people, right? They're made out of inorganic material, and that allows them to but they look like you and I, right? Like they have
Okay.
faces that look human and that sort of thing. They're not, I mean, they have like a metal sheen to them, right? Like they don't have flesh colored metal, but that's sort of their look. And they because they come from the plane of law, they have some powers that allow them to strictly enforce the rules of the game, right? So like they can like remove circumstantial bonuses to things or that enemies might have, or circumstantial penalties that their allies might have as they go into battle. They're extremely lightweight, so they often don't take as much damage like from falling, right? Because they are lighter and they fall slower, almost as if they are a feather. But it also means that they can be like knocked back across the map further when they get hit with forced movement and stuff like that. Um, and then, so those are kind of like the biggest, probably, wow, you can do this in this game, right? In terms
Mhm.
of the new ancestries. But we do have 12 ancestries total that are going to be in the core. Hakan are our take on like half giants, right? That
Okay.
I think people are really going to like and think are cool. They have an ability that you can get where it is, they see their death, like the moment of their death. And so you as a player can decide when that moment is. If you die before then, you don't actually die. You get to come back after a period of stasis. Basically, you turn into like rock, and then you come back. But when your true death is occurring, and you can declare that, you get all of these bonuses and stuff until the end of the encounter, and then at the end of the encounter, you tap out. Right, you die. So there's stuff like that, like fated in their origins. And the other thing that we've done is we've taken this approach of every ancestry has a key trait, right? That is related to their biology or physiology, that is like, this is who you are. And then everything else that you can get is done through point buy. So you might create, for instance, a Time Raider who has a bunch of psionic mind powers, right?
Mhm.
And I might create a Time Raider as a bunch of powers related to my eyes and my arms. And they'd play very differently at the table. And then like they might be suited better to different classes and things like that. And that is for all of the ancestries, including human, across the board, that we have like different things you can buy into in that way. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, another new thing that has popped up in the latest playtest is titles. So,
Yes.
we've, if I recall correctly, we talked a little bit about titles at some point in time. I think it was a little bit earlier on. And you guys were trying it out. So, talk to us a little bit about titles. What sort of benefits they give players or penalties they give players.
Yeah, so titles are rewards
Mhm.
essentially, right? That you can earn. So imagine if a feat in D&D, instead of it being something that you just got when you leveled up, right? Which is great, getting things when you level up, awesome. Um, it is something that you actually have to qualify for through heroic deeds, right? So for instance, right, I got my document open here. We've got a title like Elemental Dabbler, and the prerequisite is you defeat a monster with the elemental keyword, right? Such as the Crux of Fire, right? And then when you get this title, there are a whole bunch of different benefits, and you get to pick one, right? So, like, you could pick Elemental Blaster, which is you gain the Hurl element feature, which means that you can like throw fire or acid around, right? You can gain some elemental immunity, right? Or you can have your weapons deal elemental damage as you're going with them, right? And they're tiered, which means that like as you get the more heroic the deed, right? The better the reward is. So for instance, right, we have a demigod title, right? And one of the prerequisites for that is you have to earn another title, right, called Godsworn, and then hundreds of worshipful mortals have to complete a divine ritual in your name. Like you have to become a god, basically,
Okay.
right? You have to
Okay.
convince people to have faith in you. And then when you get that, like you're raising your characteristics, you have longevity, right? You can hear directly anyone who prays to you. It's like that scene in Bruce Almighty. Who knew we'd be referencing this movie in this interview? Where Jim Carrey is like hearing all of the prayers. Like that's a thing that you can do, right? So it's all kinds of things, but again, they're earned. They're things that you kind of have to go and seek out, which ties in then to that downtime system we were talking about, where if you as a player, we think it's good if you're a player and you have ambition, right? So you as a player might say, aha, I really want this title, but I need to slay an evil dragon. Well, I better research some evil dragons to see where they are so I can get this title, right? Those are the kinds of things that I think we would be tapping into. Yeah.
Is there a limit to how many titles a person can have?
It's a good question. So currently we're playtesting that it's kind of up to the director's discretion, and we give advice, right, about like what's good and what's not. That may change based on some of the feedback that I have currently read, which is like I think it would be great if we let people know like you can only have one per level or one per tier of play, whatever we're going to call our tiers of play, right? So that kind of thing, yeah. So I think we're probably going to go the opposite and have a hard rule, and then have advice about lifting that rule if people want to do that.
Okay. So another thing that Draw Steel has that's separate from titles are perks. So what exactly are perks and how do they differ from titles?
So perks differ in the sense that they're more like feats in that you just get them when you're leveling up. You get one at character creation, and they are specifically non-combat related things, right?
Okay.
So they are meant to round out your character in social situations, in exploration, negotiation, in downtime, right? There's perks that relate to that. And the perks are divided up into different categories. So there's lore perks and intrigue perks and exploration perks and interpersonal perks, right? Things like that, crafting perks. And those, so they come by, and those are things that help you define your character. One piece of feedback that we got was like, people really wanted more ways to define their characters other than skills, right? Outside of combat. So, we have things like uh, Monster Whisperer. You can use the handle animal skill to interact with non-sapient monsters who aren't animals, right? So, like,
Okay.
it's not a horse, it's a giant floating eyeball of goop, right? And it doesn't really do much. It doesn't have like above animal sapience, right? But that means that like you can now interact with it using these different skills, right? So it often lets you use your skills in different ways, or sometimes it just lets you do something else. So, like for instance, we have a open book, right? So when you get a chance to speak one-on-one with someone, you can ask them a question about themselves. If they choose to answer it honestly, they can then immediately ask you a question in turn, which you have to answer honestly. If
Okay.
they choose not to answer honestly, you can deflect or redirect their question. So it's sort of like you set up this thing where you're like, all right, I'm going to ask you a question, director, and we're in this scene with this NPC. If they answer honestly, they get some information out of me too, right? Like, so you get to create these situations that are fun to role play with perks. And then we also have supernatural perks, which are like, hey, guess what? I have a little bit of telepathy, or I have a little bit of, telekinesis that I can bring to the table. I can heat up a mug of coffee, right, as I'm holding it here, like that kind of thing. So you have supernatural perks, kind of like cantrips, right, in
Okay.
D&D that would let you do fun stuff. Yeah.
So, what, in your opinion, has been the best change to Draw Steel in the latest version of the rules that have come out?
Yeah. So for me, I think it has been the perks, right? The perks have been really well. And shout out to Cassandra MacDonald, who is the designer who like went hard on perks and designed pretty much all of them. And Paul Hughes, who worked on the titles, many of his titles, once we realized we were doing perks, became perks, right? So those folks really went in hard, and it is a thing that has made the game super, super fun and interesting, in addition to Willie's downtime activities, right? Willie's downtime activities, I think what these things have done is help people get a fuller picture of their characters beyond the tactical element, right? Which is always something we wanted to do. Negotiation's always been part of the game, right? Crafting and research, but this made it like there's stuff that matters now
Mhm.
outside of combat and fighting monsters. And that to me is a significant change that people really like.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, we are looking forward to seeing the final version of Draw Steel either next year or in 2026. So we can't wait to see it. We can't wait to play it. And if you are looking for more information on Draw Steel, where is the best place to go, James?
Yeah, so I believe you can go to drawsteel.com, and that will have the info. But if you search for MCDM Draw Steel, it will also come up. I think if you just search for Draw Steel, we're the first thing that comes up as well. So yeah, those are the best places to go. I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/ James Introcaso. I stream and talk about the game all the time, and so does Matt. He's at twitch.tv/ Matthew Colville. So we stream, we take questions and stuff like that. That's another way to do it. Or you can come back here to this channel, hit that rate and subscribe button, because we're going to continue to talk about this game here. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, well, and just saved me from doing my in spiel. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out our other videos on Above the Table.